Today on CityCast Denver, new campaign finance reports show the governor's race between Attorney General Phil Weiser and Senator Michael Bennet is getting some serious infusions of cash. But who or where is the combined $9 million coming from? David Sirota, editor-in-chief of The Lever, joins me to chat dark money in politics, President Trump's interest in the state's credit card interest rates, a ski patrol union battle, and more. Today is Thursday, January 22nd. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about.
I do kind of like how much of a psychopath Luca is. Luca has that like Joker face on all the time, like Joker, like the Joker.
Yes, he's an like interesting
deranged.
one to read. Yeah. Well, I should actually welcome you. David Sirota, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we're not talking basketball, but I do want to talk to you about a couple different hot topics impacting Denver and Colorado. The one I really want to start with, though, is this labor strike situation in Telluride. I got to be honest with you. I did not realize that Mountain Village and Telluride were two different towns connected by a gondola. I had no idea. Are you a big skier?
I do ski a lot. Or at least, actually, it's not a lot by Colorado standards, but I definitely ski a sizable amount because my kids love to do it, and so it's a thing that we do together.
Well, I know you have feelings about the business of ski resorts as well, so I want to catch folks up just real quick on the basics of this particular situation. So ski patrollers went on strike on December 27th and ultimately reached an agreement to go back to work on January 9th, with the patrollers union saying that the, quote, broken system had still not been addressed. Do you agree that the ski resort business model is a broken system?
I certainly think that the affordability crisis around ski resorts in specific becomes a crisis for those who work at the ski resort because they can't afford to live anywhere near these resorts. And if you make people commute, the better the ski day is, the harder the commute is, right? So like it's one thing to... If people are working in downtown Denver and they can't afford to live in downtown Denver and they live a little bit farther out, I mean, that's also a problem. But in theory, the I guess, greatness of Denver isn't predicated on whether there is snow in Denver. The greatness of the ski area is predicated on how much snow it has. So creating a larger and larger commute for the workforce is sort of an especially bad problem when the workforce is going to a ski mountain where there's a lot of snow. I mean, anybody who's driven up I-70 in a snowstorm knows what a problem that is. So I think it's not that the business model of ski resorts is broken. It's that the workforce situation, I think, of ski resorts is really unsustainable, unacceptable, and a problem.
Yeah, I was looking at, there was quite a bit of coverage of this from like smaller ski blogs. And I read a interview with one ski patroller who said, I have 2 to 3 jobs. I live in Rico. He doesn't live in Telluride or Mountain Village. Yep. I share a 2-bedroom with my girlfriend and another couple to sort of, make the math work. But also, I mean, I think on the other side of it, though, we're hearing from consumers, at least, that it's, like you were saying, it's an expensive hobby. So there's a lot of money going into it. And these ski patrollers are essentially saying, I can't afford to do this job. Like, what do you think is the fix, or how does this balance out better?
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to, let's be clear. This doesn't have to be a crazy expensive hobby. This was supposed to be a thing that families do, an outdoor activity that families do, by the way, on public land, right? I mean, this is public land, or at least most of it is public land. So yeah, the equipment can be expensive. The schlep can be schleppy, but it's, other than the equipment, it's supposed to sort of be like, you go for a hike. Now, obviously there's more infrastructure and the like than when you go on a hike. Meaning there's lifts. I mean, the big expense is the lifts and the trail maintenance. So let's not underplay that. I guess what I'm getting at is that it didn't used to be this expensive. The entire business, right? I mean, there is people who are older who live in Colorado remember when, the ski bum, the lift ticket was 40, $50. There used to be, I think, a discount at one of the gas station chains I think it was for copper, right? I mean, this didn't become what it is now. What it is now is a different business model than what it has been, and I think that's lamentable at like every level, whether it's the people who want to ski or the workers who are working at the ski resorts. All of that is a long way of saying certainly the big ski resorts are charging more and more, way above inflation, the rate of inflation. So they're making more and more money. And the idea that they don't have money to pay the people who make the resorts run better, so that those folks can at least afford to live within 45 minutes or a half hour of the mountain. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. That does not fly. I mean, imagine the commute for a ski patrol person going to Telluride. You have to be there when at least presumably a little bit earlier than the mountain opens, right? The mountain opens 8:30, 9. So you're leaving and driving through a snowstorm at what, 6 a.m?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't doubt that part is tough. I think the other thing, though, I want to talk about with this is the economics of the ski town idea. So I read this post from this skiing and hiking blog called Peak Rankings that speculated about the economic impact of this particular strike on Telluride, which is a resort town. Obviously, business owners were super upset about the resort shutting down during the strike. And this person writing this blog speculated that the strike failed because it hurt the town more than it hurt the resort and the resort owners. What do you think that means for workers hoping to exert more power over ski resorts in the future?
Yeah, I saw that story, and I get both sides, the worker side and the small business side of this, where the small businesses were essentially pressing the workers to take a deal because the strike itself was hurting the economy of the town. I mean, I think that the owner, this distant California real estate guy, is essentially relying on that dynamic to get what he wants. I mean, he doesn't mind that the the proletariat, if you will, or the proletariat and the petty bourgeois, if you want to use those old terms, right? They're fighting with each other while he's sitting there saying, "I'm not going to pay anybody a lot better," right? I mean, that works for him. And how do you break that? I think that's the big question. Like, how do you create solidarity between the workers who need to make a better living, the community that needs the business, the ski resort, to bring in tourists? How do you create that solidarity rather than essentially having the dynamic where the owner can essentially rely on them being pitted against each other? And I saw in that story, I think a small business owner, they were saying, we understand the lament of the workers. We get it. But
Yeah.
and we think your demands are just. But like, you're gonna hurt the town to the point of where it can't recover.
Yeah, I saw that too. I saw a lot of business owners, or at least comments from business owners and folks in the town feeling very conflicted about the situation. But it also sort of brings into play this question of like, is this just a precarious business model to have a single industry dominate your town? Which is
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think non-diversified economies, local economies, are always at risk of the person who owns the industry and the business, the one company town, if you will. That person doing all sorts of things like this. I certainly think like Telluride is pretty isolated. It is essentially a one industry, or at least one company town, in the sense of it relies on that one company to bring in those outsized dollars. I think it's a fair question. How sustainable really is that? I do think what was interesting in this is that there was this like attempt and then or sort of it seemed like an attempt for the town or a set of investors to grab a part of the ownership stake.
Yeah,
and
so
I think
that was like you mentioned this distant California owner whose name is Chuck Horning, who owns the resort and lives in California.
right.
So the mayor of Mountain Village and the mayor pro tem, Marty Prohaska and Meehan Fee, both flew out to California to sort of share, they had this proposition for this owner that said, hey, we've got investors that want to buy 51% of the resort as sort of like maybe a way to solve this problem. And as far as I understood, he declined that offer.
Yeah, and there was some controversy over whether the offer should have been made or what, and I think the thing that I took away from that is there's an argument that a more diversified ownership with some local stake in the ownership will forge better compromises, because then you have all of the so-called stakeholders or more of the so-called stakeholders at the table. Then the town, or at least a set of investors related to the town, are at the same table as the guy far away in California who may not really care what happens, right? I mean, I looked at, Telluride I read reportedly has a $20 million in earnings. And I assume that's earnings after it pays its bills. That's a number that I read. I mean, I assume a very wealthy real estate guy out in California certainly cares about his business in terms of whether it's sustainable or not. But I'm not quite sure how much that person really cares in the same way a worker living in the town cares, or a small business relying on the tourist economy cares, right? So I think there's an asymmetry here where the people who don't have leverage are the ones who arguably have more to lose or care more than the guy far away who may care, but maybe this is just a hobby to him.
I feel like the situation is still a little bit ongoing because like the Petroleers Union said, like, this was not ideal for us. But I do want to say before we move on from this story, the mayor and the mayor pro tem the mayor of Mountain Village resigned, and then the mayor pro tem took a leave of absence. So it kind of feels like an ongoing story that we'll be watching, especially I think, as you said, like the question of like snow.
Right.
Did you know CityCast Denver has a perks program? Every week, we're highlighting some standout deals from our favorite businesses in town to help you support local and save some money. It's a win-win. Here are some highlights from this week. Check out Meow Wolf's Adultiverse Space Rodeo on January 17th and experience the worlds of Meow Wolf Denver transformed into a 21 and up psychedelic party. Saddle up for an intergalactic adventure. Just use code GiddyUp for $4.20 off an Adultiverse ticket. Offer available for redemption now through January 17th. Or what about Topo Designs? Just visit a Topo Designs retail store and mention this ad to receive 20% off your purchase. Some exclusions apply. Valid until February 1st. Looking for some fun? Check out Green Door and pre-order a curated cannabis box for your Denver trip. Includes edibles, snacks, and local accessories, ready for pickup near your stay. No stress, no lines, just a better trip. Use code DenverPerk for $10 off any experience box. To see a full list of participating businesses, just visit denver.citycast.fm/perks. It's a great way to check out new restaurants, shops, and events in the Mile High City without breaking your budget. And I love that for you. Let's move on to another story involving big money, different kind of big money, though. We want to talk to you about the governor's race. So you made this great podcast and now a book adaptation, Master Plan, about how rich people control our politics. So I want to talk about that when we're looking at the governor's race. We got some new campaign finance reports that were released recently. Michael Bennet and Phil Weiser have reportedly raised a collective $9 million. What are you seeing in these numbers?
So the thing that stood out to me in all these numbers is the fact that the second largest donor in the entire governor's race is anonymous. We have no idea who this donor, and I should say, or donors are. Because what we see in the reports is a now common two-step where the candidates have their money that goes directly into their campaigns. That's called hard money. That can't come from corporations. It can come from individuals. It can come from political action committees, and that is fully disclosed. Then you have these things called super PACs, and super PACs are supposed to be, and I'm underscoring, supposed to be. Okay, I think it's a legal fiction, but technically they are supposed to be independent of the candidates, even as they are supporting those candidates. And so typically now you have candidate affiliated super PACs, and both candidates in the gubernatorial race, they have a candidate affiliated, quote unquote, independent super PACs. Now, those super PACs do have to disclose their donors. So now you're thinking, well, Sirota, what's the problem? What do you mean there's an anonymous donor? Well, here's the problem. They disclose the names of their individual donors, but then an entity called a 501c4, which is a dark money group, can give to the super PAC. So what you see on the super PAC disclosure is just the name of the entity. You don't see the name of who actually donated to the entity. So in Michael Bennett's super PAC, there has been about $500,000 worth of money coming in from a 501c4 whose donors we do not know, and under our law, we basically can never know.
And so I think that this super PAC is called Brighter Future for Colorado.
Right. So you don't know anything. It's not even like, right. It's not even like the, and I'm just, I'm not even speculating here. But like, it's not even like the oil and gas fund of Colorado. It doesn't even have to tell you anything. It's just like, people for, Colorado's greatness, right? Or what Brighter Future for Colorado. So my point is that, and I'm not picking on Michael Bennet here. What I'm saying is that we have a real problem in this state where there are powerful forces who can dump $500,000 in one fell swoop into a super PAC who clearly are trying to buy things from the governor's race. They clearly are, it's an investment. And we, the public, can never know who is buying what.
And maybe that's my next question is what does this dark money group want out of the governor's race? Like what's the motivator here?
You'd have to know who's giving the money, right? And this, like I would flip it around also, and I would ask this: who really doesn't want Phil Weiser to be governor? Like presumably, somebody who really doesn't want Phil Weiser to be governor just dumped $500,000 into a super PAC whose sole purpose exists to make sure Phil Weiser is not governor and to make sure Michael Bennet is governor. And again, Michael Bennet may say, I have no idea who put the money in, right? It's independent. And maybe that's true, but clearly some entity is investing. And there's some intrigue here too, in terms of what Colorado did. Because when I started looking at this, I was like, wait a minute, hold on a minute. I thought we fixed this problem back in 2019. I was told, that the Colorado legislature passed an anti-dark money law. Wait a minute, I don't understand. And then I was like, maybe my brain is playing tricks on me. So I looked it up, and yes, there was the Clean Campaign Act of 2019. I particularly remember this because my wife is in the legislature, and it was like her first session in the legislature. And I was like, oh, this is great. And one of the things it purported to do, Secretary of State Jenna Griswold touted it. This is going to disclose dark money. It's going to prevent this kind of nonsense. The ultimate version of that bill that got through after it was watered down included this tiny little loophole, so insidious, that said the disclosure requirements essentially only apply to money that goes into 501c4 groups that is earmarked to be spent in elections. Now, if you think about that for it's one of those things where like you think about it for 1 second, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Then you think about it for like 1 minute, and you're like, wait a minute. So what ended up happening?
Yeah, what happened?
Right. So like this presumes that somebody trying to buy the gubernatorial race writes the check to the 501c4 and puts in the memo of the check, I want to buy the Colorado governor's race. Please spend this. Like, obviously nobody does that, right?
Sure.
So they just write the money to the dark money group and they don't, quote unquote, earmark it for anything. But of course they know that the dark money group, Colorado People for Colorado People or whatever nonsensical name it is, they know that it's going to dump it right into a super PAC. So they put a loophole in. And so when I read that story about what happened to the law, I'm like, you guys like tricked us. You went out, like Jenna Griswold went out and said like she's solved the dark money disclosure stuff. And then it was like a bunch of garbage. Like you didn't solve it at all. You pretended to solve it. And now, 8 or 7 years later, we have a governor's race where the second largest donation in the entire race is from some entity that we have no idea who's trying to buy it.
So then I guess what would there be? What would be the next step then? Because I think Arizona and Montana have actually passed some laws that are supposed to cap or stop that dark money. Could Colorado do something? Like what would be the next step, do you think, for maybe the future? Colorado's
legislature right now could close that loophole today for this governor's race now. It could completely close that. It could look at what Arizona did. Arizona has a much different disclosure system. And I should mention, it was passed by voters in a much less blue state, right? That's a purple state.
I was going to say they've flip-flopped back and forth with governors too. I think it was Republican, Democrat, Republican. So
right. So this is
landscape.
It's not as blue a state as Colorado. They put it to the ballot. It got 70% of the vote. And what Arizona's disclosure law basically says is and it's much different. It works, but when it comes to this loophole, it says that unless the donor to the dark money group says, I literally do not want my money spent on elections, unless they opt out, then the money, once it hits certain thresholds of spending, then the money that's spent in the elections must be disclosed. My point is, let's imagine that the donor who wants to help the candidate, in this case, Michael Bennet, knows that if they're disclosed, it might become a flashpoint in the governor's race. It might end up becoming a political issue. Okay. Essentially, then, what you want to do as that donor, you want to give dark. Sam Bankman-Fried, remember him, the crypto guy who
yes.
went to jail? He literally said, they were like, it was like when he got the scandal. He said, most of my Democratic donations were disclosed. I gave to Republicans too, but I gave dark, because I just didn't want to take the political heat for giving to Republicans. So I guess my point is that in this example, the donor who wants to give money to Michael Bennet or any other gubernatorial candidate, they give dark. What the Arizona law would say is the fact that you gave it means unless you said, I don't want this going to politics, then it was subject to disclosure. And the Colorado legislature could do that right now.
Okay, last topic I want to hit you with is also money related, but we're talking credit card interest rates. I had not heard anything about this, but you at The Lever just had this piece about Trump and a new Colorado law. Can you explain what's happening here?
Yes. So Donald Trump is out there saying he wants credit card caps. Caps on credit card interest rates. Whether you believe him or not, some of the proposals he's put forward is he's like, it's going to be voluntary and I'm going to have a Trump credit card. But, he is saying, I support a cap on credit card interest rates. So in 2023, Colorado actually passed a law to try to allow at the state level some of these interest rate caps. And without going too deep into it, long ago, the Supreme Court passed did a ruling that said states can export effectively their own usury laws to other states. That created the problem of if a state like South Dakota said we don't have a usury law and you can charge somebody 500% interest, that all the credit card companies can go incorporate in South Dakota, and then when you apply for a credit card, even if your state has a 10% or 15% cap, the South Dakota essentially invalidates that. So all that is important to understand what Colorado did. When the Supreme Court issued that ruling, the federal government passed a law essentially enshrining it, but said, hey, states, if they want, can kind of opt out of this without getting too technical about it. So in 2023, Colorado passed a law opting out of this system, essentially saying that if you're a bank doing business in Colorado, you have to follow our usury laws. The law passes, it goes into effect, the bankers challenge it. Right? They say, no, this is not okay. This violates the old Supreme Court precedent. The Biden administration's FDIC supports Colorado. Colorado ends up winning in the first stage of court. Meanwhile, the Trump administration, and here's the big story, the Trump administration now comes in and reverses the federal government's position, saying we're no longer supporting Colorado. We want the higher courts to overturn Colorado's law. So all of this is a long way of saying Donald Trump is literally campaigning or saying he supports a cap on credit card rates while sending his regulators into court to try to block Colorado's same credit card interest rate caps.
So he's doing one thing and he's saying one thing and doing another thing?
Yes, and I know it's like, oh, I'm not surprised that Donald Trump is doing that because Donald Trump.
I feel like that would be the response.
But I guess like we're actually doing the thing that he says he wants to do, right? I mean, Donald Trump is statement by statement oftentimes a pathological liar, but here it's like one of the action, like words and actions. And our state is actually doing the right thing. I mean, we just talked about the governor's race. Phil Weiser is the Attorney General's office is literally in court defending our right to say that credit cards cannot rip us off. And Donald Trump, based on his words, should be our ally. And he is helping the bankers try to crush that.
So I want to put this in terms that folks might understand a little better, because I'm thinking about, honestly, after I read your story, I went and I looked at my credit card and I was like, what is my interest rate on my ginormous bank credit card? I have like a credit union credit card, and then I have a Chase credit card. My Chase credit card is 24%, 23.99. Yep. I think my Canvas account is like 10% or something. Yep. So this law would say, at least Colorado law that exists or we're trying to pass would say we would want to cap it at what?
Well, first and foremost, it says that Colorado is allowed to cap it.
Okay.
Right. I mean, we can discuss which charges, and it was a whole bunch of lender fees and bank fees. It just most importantly establishes that we are allowed to say to your credit card company, you can't charge more than X, Y, or Z for this or that. The Trump administration is in court saying Colorado and every other state is not allowed to regulate this at all. And that's really the problem. And that's how the credit card industry has been operating for 40 plus years. And so this is really, it's not just the Colorado fight. It's whether states across the country are allowed to say, if you're a bank operating in our state, we are allowed to say what you can charge, how much interest you can charge for everything from a mortgage to a credit card to any other sort of lending product.
So I wanted, so you kind of get into the argument that they make for credit card companies, I guess, are making for their ability to charge higher interest rates. So you said, so shortly after Trump's announcement that he was opposing these interest rate caps, like you said, the American Bankers Association put out a press release saying, quote, evidence shows that a 10% interest rate cap would reduce credit availability and be devastating for millions of American families. What do you make of that argument?
I mean, the idea that like you can't charge more than 10 or 20% means that, you can't run a profitable lending business is so preposterously ridiculous that like it's shocking to me at one level that anyone would let it come out of their mouth. Secondly, I would say, listen, if you think someone is such a risky lending bet that you feel you need to charge them 50% interest to like protect yourself, right? Maybe you shouldn't be lending them money, right? Like,
I mean, it does feel to me. I have to be honest. It feels predatory at that
yes,
level.
like
I'm not
like
trying to show my bias here, but that feels like that is how a lot of this feels. And I feel like at every step, as a consumer, every way, someone is trying to get you to sign up for their credit card.
Exactly. I mean, they're making like they make it seem like, oh, we're being nice by lending to somebody who's like on the edge of being able to pay us back. Meanwhile, like they're like mailing you all this crap. They're like emailing you. They're like, we got the greatest rate. Like they're enthusiastic about it, not out of the goodness of their heart. They're enthusiastic about it because they're making a ton of money, right? And so the idea that people will not be able to access a credit that they are credit worthy for if we say you can't charge 50% interest it just doesn't it doesn't fly on its face. It's totally ridiculous. Or at minimum, if you think it's a pendulum, right? I would argue that the pendulum has swung so far over to the like, we're lending to everybody at ridiculously usurious rates, and there needs to be a little bit of a rebalancing here. We can't go over this much interest. I mean, that seems to me to be what Colorado is trying to establish here, that we are allowed as a state to continually set and reset those caps, and it's not just a predatory free-for-all.
One more thing I want to quote from the article from your reporter. They said, quote, they argue the caps would save consumers billions of dollars each year and that credit card companies could easily absorb the lower rates, given that the financial sector has reams of other profitable cash cows, such as credit card swipe fees charged to merchants. So to push back, say I'm a small business, those credit card swipe fees are rough on me. Is this argument saying like the burden is now going to be on me, the small business owner, to take on bigger fees because these companies have to charge smaller interest rates?
I think it's fair to ask, okay, if they're making, a crap ton of money off of credit cards and they have to make like a little less, where are they going to try to make more? I think that, I think that's a fair question to ask, but I also think that listen, we can regulate swipe fees. Right? Like the idea that the entire financial sector just gets to prey on everybody at the current or larger profit rates that it gets, it's just, I think that's a fiction. Like I think what we need to do is think about the finance sector as a utility, right? Think about what a utility actually is supposed to be. A utility has a basic monopoly in exchange for the fact that its business is regulated. Xcel Energy has a basic monopoly because the idea was we don't want to, make two sets of power lines, right? So, okay, in exchange for being the monopoly, we're supposed to be regulating most of your business. It's not just a free-for-all, right? Like that's the trade-off here. I think we need to think about banking and finance as a utility. Like you're not really making anything, right? Like the bank, like I'm sorry, like the bankers aren't really, they're just exchanging and trading money. Okay. Everybody needs access to capital at some level. So in exchange for you doing business here, here's a bunch of rules so that you don't constantly put people into bankruptcy. And I want to add one thing here, because I know some conservative folks will say, oh, Soros always pushing for regulations and the like. Let's also remember just how incredibly subsidized the banking industry actually is. This is one of my pet peeves. And just indulge me for a second.
Go for it.
The big banks, okay, right now, the big banks get to take your deposits, okay, pay you, according to the latest government data, on average, pay you as a depositor, on average, 0.1% interest. Then they can take your deposits and they can deposit it at the Federal Reserve Bank, something that you're not allowed to do, and they get paid 4 or 5% on your money. So this is a built-in government subsidy for this industry. Take your money, only pay you 0.1%. They're giant monopolies. They're sort of colluding to keep interest rates, depositor interest rates down. They charge you, 7% on a mortgage. They charge you 20% on a credit card, right? And they're getting paid 5% if they just take your money and put it at the Fed, and you're not allowed to do that. The reason I bring this up is because this is an industry that we should treat as a utility, not just because we need it, basic capital liquidity, but also because we're already subsidizing it. We're already giving it the best deal in the world. I would love that deal where I get to pay you 0.1% for your money, and then I get to go over here to the Federal Reserve and I get 5%. I just sit back and make 4% on the spread. Like that's a subsidy, and this is an industry that requires this kind of regulation in exchange for that privilege.
Well, I'll be thinking about this all night. Like, why do I have a Chase card when I have a credit union? But my Chase card gives me miles. And that's how I went to Paris last year.
I mean, the business of credit cards is like one of the shadiest businesses. And them pleading poverty and saying, we really care about, we're not going to be able to help, help poor people. It's like you have got, I can't believe that can come out of someone's mouth with a straight face. And it's not coming out of someone's mouth. They're writing it down, which probably makes it easier for them to say it because they don't have to say it and maintain a straight face.
Well, David, this was really fun. I always appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell the Super PAC A Brighter Future for Colorado about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And remember, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Denver neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya.